So, welcome to our UX Psychology Meetup number 14, UX Psychology and Ethics, Friends of Foes with Tiziana D'Agostino. I'm Mark. I'm the founder of the UX Psychology Meetup in Germany, and I've been working in the field of research, design technology, and psychology for almost 20 years now. With me is my co-host, Verena Seibert-Giller. I hope she's here. Verena is a veteran in UX psychology. Please check out her UX psychology lens tool set. It's fantastic. Which is it's a card set that enables people without a psychology background to easily learn, understand, and apply the most relevant psychological insights in the UX work. If you want to check it out, please do so on uxpsychologylens.com. If you have any questions about today's talk that we should discuss afterwards, please just post them here in the chat. And if you want to support us with the curation of any upcoming meetups, or you know someone who should be invited here to talk in our illustrious round, please write us a mail to info@uxps.eu. This is how the meetup is structured. Today, we are already in the middle of the introduction. In a bit, we will have Tiziana's talk, which will last about plus minus 40 minutes. And after the talk, we still have enough time to answer all your questions. Yesterday, I played around with an AI platform called Midjourney. Most of you might know it already. And I gave it a task, a little prompt, imagine dark UX pattern. And guess what? The AI whipped up an interface right away. Just took some seconds. You can see it here on the slide on the right side. It's absolutely not perfect, but hey, AI is in the field, pretty new, and it's just getting started if it comes to interfaces. This gets you thinking. If we can use AI to build interfaces with just sentences, every, let's say, manager without a moral compass also can use it in the future to create what we call dark patterns. These are cunning designs that manipulate user behavior, and these dark patterns can push us to do things we wouldn't normally do. Sounds pretty scary. It absolutely should be, and that's precisely what we're here to talk about today. Allow me to introduce Tiziana. In her talk, she will probably dive into the abyss of dark patterns, but definitely ethics. And Tiziana will shed light on why ethics are a cornerstone when it comes to designing experiences. So let's dive right in. Tiziana, the stage is yours.
Hello.
I stopped sharing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. As Mark said, my name is Tiziana, and I will present today on the ethics of UX psychology. So let me share my screen real quick. And where is that? I think it's this one. No, sorry. Yes. Oh. So I'm going to put actually in slideshow mode so that we can start discussing this topic, which I think is very, very important. Before we start, I would love to know where you're all from. So maybe you can put in the chat. Mark can help me out, read some of them because I can't see the chat when I'm full screen.
I will. Yeah.
So, but I am from San Diego, California. And so it's about 9 o'clock in the morning here. So I would love to know where you're from. Give it a couple seconds. See where we. Yeah. Actually, I could probably. Let me just escape. Let's go look back.
So we have Croatia, Vienna. Mark is here from Berlin.
Nice.
Ankita from India, currently based in India. We should talk, Ankita.
Nice. That's
Berlin,
awesome.
Hamburg.
Perfect.
London, India, Prague,
wow.
UK, North Carolina, Iran. Lida, welcome.
Wow.
So.
Nice. That's a nice. different places. That's great. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're located. So so I feel very passionate about this topic because, just like Mark said, there is way too much of this misleading pattern, as we'll see in a second. And I think that long term, this is really a bad idea, even for businesses. So I feel that the more we get into AI and all those other fields, the more is important that we, as practitioner, actually practice ethics. So before we start, just a really brief intro about myself. I'm originally from Milan, Italy. I was just there. In fact, I just came back last week. And so I escaped the heat wave. But I moved in my 20s in San Diego, California, and this is where I am right now. And I am a UX psychology interaction design consultant, and I help companies to create product that are ethical but also persuasive, and hopefully fulfill the business goals. I'm also an educator. I've been teaching secondary education, like college education, since I'm not gonna say the year, but for a long time. And I also a speaker occasionally. My path to where I am right now has been a little bit full of turns. So I started out as a designer, as a graphic designer. That was my first degrees and my first jobs. And then I added some web design skills, UI, and then I moved to web development, front end. I'm not a programmer at all. And then I finally leaned to UX design, and I finally felt that it was kind of my place because I've always been very interested in psychology on my own. I did a lot of studying on my own and research, and I felt that UX would actually combine all of those aspects, design and web and interaction, psychology. So I really, really like it. And then I made it official, and I got a master in media psychology, so that I could deepen my knowledge on psychology. And that's where I am today. So today agenda, we're going to start talking a little bit about how psychology help create better products, but also as a segue to that, how this power to create beautiful product can also turn into the dark side. And so psychology can be used to trick and mislead. So we are gonna also talk about our ethical concern and get to really the core of the talk. If psychology and ethics, and ethics are enemies, and then we're gonna move to the way forward. How can you be part of the solution? So, if you know a little bit of psychology, and I'm assuming if you're part of this group, you're probably really interested in psychology, you understand that we design for people. And because we design for people, we need to understand how people think. And that gives us a little bit of a superpower, I feel, to create better user experience for our user. UX psychology in general help us with knowledge because it help us understand the human brain. And because of that, we can predict future behavior based on past behaviors. Also give us more empathy because the more you know about strengths and weaknesses of the human mind, the more you feel empathy and connection with your fellow human beings. And then help us with behavior and behavioral change, because if I know why you're doing something, it will be easier for me to change it. I can target a specific behavior. I know what caused it, or at least I can guess, and I can design intervention and test them to see if I can change that behavior. And I think this words to change it is the part where the ethic can come in. I'm not gonna discuss the moral, philosophical implication of ethics because we are practitioner. And so I will put it more in the practical field, in real life, more than academia. So how do we use psychology to become better at creating user experience to be more effective? Well, one of the things we can do, we know at psychology, we're pretty well versed in persuasion, especially the several level influence, which I mentioned in a second. We also very well known in biases and heuristic, in nudges, that basically the ability to show you the right path without limiting freedom, and in choice architecture, which means organize options in a way that makes sense. So let's look at them a little bit
Tiziana,
more.
Tiziana,
Yes,
do you show already something? But we still see
I am.
loading.
Oh, really?
That
Okay,
was the
let
question.
me try to, yeah, no, in my screen, it said that I'm sharing, but let me try again. So let me stop sharing and reshare and tell me if you can see it. Share screen. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, now we can see it.
You can see it? Okay, sorry. So let me go back here.
So we haven't seen the first 6 slides.
Okay, I'm gonna go back slowly. It's not really anything too exciting, but I just have a beautiful picture of Milano and San Diego. Maybe you know why I moved to San Diego from Milan, just by looking at the picture. This was kind of the intro, the agenda, and this is the simplified version of why psychology helps us. And I'm going to spend more time now to go through each of those four, the fourth part, the persuasion, biases, nudges, and choices. So persuasion obviously comes in a lot of different flavor. There's a lot of different way you can convince people to do what you like to do. And I wanted to also emphasize the fact that there's really nothing wrong with persuasion per se. If you ever decide to go out with your friends and you have to come to an agreement of what to do, that's persuasion. One person will convince the rest of the group to do something. So there's really nothing wrong with persuasion as long as it's transparent and it's not misleading. In the early 80s, Professor Cialdini realized that most of the technique we use to persuade by looking at marketing and advertisement, I've been using it forever, can be broken down in 6 categories. And he recently added 7th couple of years ago. And those are the 6 categories that he realized. So the first, what he calls the lever or influence, or how you can persuade people. So the first one is reciprocation, meaning that we like to return a favor in kind if somebody give us a favor. So for example, if you see any website that asks you to download, they tell you can download something for free in exchange of an email address, that's the exact principle reciprocation. So you're gonna give your email address in exchange for something. If people give you a gift without even asking for anything in return, you're even more willing to do a favor for them. So any website that give you a gift, you would be more willing to buy, or any company, you'll be more willing to buy from them. The second one he talks about is commitment and consistency. So basically to convince someone to buy your product or to do what you would like to do, you can start by asking a very small commitment instead of a big ask. So, and then incrementally ask a little more. And this is because we like to complete what we started. So if you get it, even a small beginning, then it will be more likely you're gonna finish. So in this case, when you say your profile is 84 complete, the fact that it shows me that I'm almost there, it will increase the chance of me finishing it. Social proof, I'm sure I don't have to explain to you guys because you probably read reviews all the time, but we like to see what other people are doing. Scarcity, once again, if there is something that is not a lot, then we want it more. Authority, we trust people that we feel have better knowledge than we do. So if you say the doctor recommended X, you're probably more likely to follow the advice than if some other random person would do that. And then finally, liking. If you like somebody, you're way more likely to go along with what they ask for. Think about your friends or anybody you like, you're probably more likely to say yes. And the last part that it just defined recently is unity, which means if you feel that you belong in the same category of the person asking, you will be more likely to follow along. So for example, I graduated from this university as DSU, And so the idea is if somebody else talking to me say that they are from the same university and then ask me for a favor, I may be more likely to do it because I feel we're in the same category. We both graduated from the same university. So those are some of what he calls the level of persuasion that you can use when you're creating narratives or advertisement or marketing. Biases is another tool you can use because all of us have biases. Biases are basically shortcuts that we take when we make decisions. The reason we have that is because we can analyze in depth every single decision that happens during the day. And so we're using those shortcuts called biases. Most of the time, they work really well and they help us function, but sometimes they can lead us astray. And by using those biases, you can persuade people to do different things. For example, we hate to lose. That's called loss aversions. And so anytime you present a choice as in, if you don't do this, you're going to lose something, you'll be more likely to do it. And those are some of the other biases. And there are about 220 right now that are being recognized. If you do a quick search for the cognitive biases codexes, you can see all of them. So I'll be happy in a question to go through more biases if you like it, but those are some of the most common ones. For example, framing means depending on how you word a situation, then you're gonna have a different response. So those are very, very powerful, and being aware of them will make you a better consumer because obviously marketing and any other company trying to exploit that. So you can recognize them. But also remember that even if you know about biases, you're not immune. In fact, the last one I mentioned here, the bias blind spot, is a misleading belief that bias is not gonna be affecting you. Everybody else gonna suffer from biases, but not you. So honestly, I've been studying biasing for a long time, and I still feel their influence. So even if you know it, it's still gonna affect you. Nudges is another technique you can use or tool you can use to supercharge your design. A nudge, it was originally identified by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in a book called Nudge. Great book, which I strongly recommend to anybody who's interested in psychology. And the idea of a nudge is a positive reinforcement or indirect suggestion, maybe a default, that will influence the behavior, but it will not force you to. So it will leave full freedom of choice without excessive cost involved. And it will help you to close what is called the intention action gap, meaning a lot of time we know what we want to do, but we just don't follow through. Think about New Year's resolution. If you ever make New Year resolution, you know what you want to do, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. And nudges can help you close that gap. And finally, choice architecture. Choice architecture basically means how you present the design, the information, the choices. It will make a difference. Think about if you want to eat healthier, if you stock your fridge with a lot of like fruits and veggie, and those are the first thing you see when you open the fridge, you're going to be more likely to get it versus if you have a lot of unhealthy food. That would be a choice architecture. You decided to present the healthy food first, so that's the first thing you see. And in a case like this is just a website that asks for donation for a charity. Notice that it follows some of the tools of choice architecture. So for example, reducing the choices only show what's really important instead of, here they only have 4 different amounts plus other. So it makes it very easy for me to choose how much money I wanted to donate. Defaults is also very important. We tend to follow along with defaults. So by choosing one time is almost like if it were a suggestion. And a lot of other things you can do. You can break down option. You can break down a form in multiple steps. You can have fewer attributes when you're showing the different options so that you can tell the difference between one and the other. You can make attributes, what I mean for translate, you can make attributes easier to understand. For example, in English, you can say bi-monthly to indicate every other month or twice a month. And so it's always very confusing. If you say bi-monthly, what exactly do I mean? Instead, if you say twice a month, It's pretty obvious what I mean. That's what that was what the translating attribute is. So all of those tools are super powerful because humans' brain don't have the time to rationally think on every single decision. So it's very easy to use those level of influence and persuasion to convince people to do what you want to do. The problem with that is, of course, is that if you don't have good intention, you can trick people into do something they absolutely don't want to do, or you can mislead them, or you can get them stuck, like if you were in a swamp. So what is the evil side of psychology when attached to design? There are two main parts in which you can mislead people. One is the deceptive patterns, that are also known as dark pattern. That's exactly what Mark was mentioning at the beginning. Those were first named by designer Harry Brignall. You can find his website at deceptive.design. And he's the first one that categorized them. Not that they didn't exist before him, but he categorized it first. And the second thing that you can do, you shouldn't, but you could do to mislead people, is to use something called sludge. Sludge was first mentioned in the book Nudge I referred to before, and it refers to making any task overly complex. So let me give you an example. So, for example, this design is for an online news organization called Quartz. And it is expecting or asking for donation and say, hey, our journalism has a mission. We're trying to give you the best news possible. Support us. So you would think when you click that button, you will get a form just like the one we saw before for the charity that would allow you to donate money to help journalism. Instead, what you see when you click that button, you see a mandatory field for your email address, a button that says see plans and pricing, and a little note underneath it that say that they will use your email for sending you promotion and all sort of other things. So this is very misleading because you may think that you can do a donation once to help the company, while in reality they want you to subscribe. So it's obviously not very honest. And this example is even worse. I have no idea what Curry's in UK is, some company, but this particular notice is particularly devious because there are two checkboxes, but they work exactly the opposite way. So the first checkbox, it tells you that you need to click it if you do not want to receive email from curry.com. The second one, it tells you to leave it unchecked if you don't want emails. So for the first one, if you don't want emails, you need to check it. And the second one, you need to leave it unchecked. So this is very confusing because, again, there are two similar elements that behave in opposite way. And also because it goes counter to what you're used to. Generally, when you check the box, that means you do want to receive information. So it also behave obviously opposite of what you expect. So this is a perfect example of deceptive patterns or dark patterns. Now, if you want to read more about it and you want to read every single one that Ari Brignall identified, I invite you to go to his website, deceptive.design, and kind of read all the different patterns. It's a great site. He also show you a few examples for each. There is a whole shame of sites that are particularly egregious about it, and is actually releasing a book about dark patterns on August 1st. So if you're interested to learn more about dark pattern, this is all there. The other part that I was mentioning is sludge. Sludge is if you ever fill out a government form, and I'm pretty sure this is a universal thing, not just in the US, you know what sludge is. That means something really simple, it made overly complex to confuse you and possibly make you give up. This screen that you're seeing right now is an unsubscribe screen from a newsletter. So all I wanted to do is unsubscribe. So instead of having a button to say unsubscribe and then say thank you, you unsubscribe, you have to go through this whole screen. You have to reading what the text is, and then you have to uncheck every single box if you don't want any of those emails. And at the end, you have to enter 4 digits to confirm it. So obviously something that should be one click, it becomes really, really complicated. So this is a perfect example of sludge, and it's done on purpose. It's not an accident. They're trying to make sure that you forget maybe to uncheck one box so they can keep on sending you spam. So obviously it's very easy to misuse those tools. But I want to hope that all of you are more interested in using them with ethic and doing it right. So I always love this quote from Spider-Man, written by Stan Lee, that said, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Plus, it's Comic-Con week in San Diego. So I'm completely thinking about superpowers and Marvel characters. But I really believe that. I really think that psychology is a superpower, and I really think you need to use it responsibly. So what does that mean? So again, I'm not going to get into the philosophical discussion about what's ethic and what is not ethics, but I want to talk about in practical terms. I don't believe that we as designers that use psychology are puppet masters. I don't believe that. I don't believe we manipulate people without their knowledge unless we really try by using dark patterns. What I do believe, though, is that there is some ethics in using UX psychology. In fact, Carl Sunstein, who wrote the Nudge book I mentioned earlier, he actually wrote a whole book about the ethics of influence. And one of the main points that he makes, which I 100% believe, is that influence or persuasion is not the same as coercion. So you're not forcing anybody as long as you stay very transparent about your intent. So Sunstein mentioned that ethical psychology will work when you preserve the freedom of choice. So you're not forcing in one way or the other, but you also steer in the direction of welfare of the customer, autonomy, meaning they can always change or reverse their decision, dignity, so you don't talk down on them, and self-government. That means they can have, again, the autonomy to make their own decision. So those are the 4 things that he believes should be followed when you're doing ethics. And I know it sounds very abstract, but I'm going to give you a very practical example that I think all of you are familiar, which is a navigator. So I don't know if you're using Google Maps or Waze or any other app that help you navigate. A navigator, a GPS, is 100% a nudge because they nudge you towards the right direction. If you want to go somewhere, right, you're asking, I need to go there, it will show you the path. Now, it will not force you to follow the path. In fact, you can change it at any time. It's not going to be hard or anything like that. And in fact, the navigator will adjust to your decision. Once you change road, it will recalculate the path. So this is a perfect example of what a nudge should be. A nudge are intervention that steer you in the right direction. They show you the way, but they also allow you to go your own way without a lot of effort. So for me, not to follow the navigation instructor is very easy. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to touch the phone. I just simply go somewhere else. So it should be the same thing in design. And one other sentence that I really love, another quote from Sunstein, is that a nudge must fully preserve freedom of choice. So if a design imposes a very big material cost on the chooser, even like a lot of work, then it's not a nudge. It may be justified for other reasons, but it's not a nudge. And this is why I think nudging and persuasion can be ethical, because you leave it open to decision. So in practice, what can you do? Well, I like the do not harm sentence that the oath the doctors take when they graduate. So try to really consider that you have the duty and responsibility to treat others with fairness and respect, and that you should put their well-being, the human well-being, above the profits. Now, for example, this is a perfect example of a dark pattern. On the right side, this is from an app that is called the Internet Movie Database, IMDb, that show you different movies, information about movies. and is asking you if you want to have notification. But notice how confusing this notification pop-up is, because it says get notified. Okay, this is clear, but the two option is later or update now. And that's very confusing because first of all, there is no, I don't want notification ever. And two, because update now make you think that your app needs to be updated, versus in reality, when you click update now, it would actually send you notification. So this is very confusing, and most likely not, people will click the wrong button. So in my opinion, this is already considered a harm. Sure, it's not the end of the world if I get notification, but it's definitely not something I would have done it personally. Okay. This is, on the other hand, is a positive example of nudge because it's very transparent and is not forcing you to do it. So this grocery store allow you to choose a goal, for example, eat less sugar. And then, so you can choose that in your options. And then you can do two things. If your goal is help to eat less sugar, you can do either when you get, you buy stuff, you put it in your cart. Let's say I get some lollies or lollipops. It will give me a notice to say, hey, by the way, remember you wanted to cut sugar. Maybe you want to take frozen yogurt instead. They have fewer sugar quantity. Okay. Or you can even do it automatically. You can tell the app that by default, if I choose lolly, to replace it with something that's a lower sugar. And then at checkout, I can always change my mind and say, no, I really do want the lollies. I don't want the frozen yogurt. So this is a perfect example of a nudge. It helped me keep my goal, eat less sugar. I specifically said that that's what I wanted to do, and it helps me do it without forcing me. This is another example of nudges that can really help. There is an app in United States. I don't know if it's similar, available probably in Europe as well, or in other parts of the world, which is basically a neighborhood social media in a way, where you can put posts or you can write and chat and things like that. So this application had nudges so that when you type in a comment to a post or write your own post, if you're using specific words or sentences, it will give you a notification. In this case, it was All Lives Matter. And the nudge will tell you that some people find this sentence offensive. So are you sure you want to send your post with that words, or you want to edit and change it? Once again, I can click publish and it will publish as is. But the fact that the notification shows up helped me to slow down and really think about it. Because we all know that sometimes you write on the internet without thinking. And if you were to think about it, maybe you wouldn't have sent it. So this is a great way to kind of make me think, so maybe I don't do as much harm. The other thing that you can do is the framing. So change the wording to make it more appealing. Let's say I want to make sure that people buy a leaner ground beef and pork instead of full fat. I could do 20% fat, or I could write 80% lean. Well, studies show that if you focus on the healthy part, 80% lean, people are more likely to buy it. So instead of writing 20% fat, I could write 80% lean to convince and persuade people to buy the healthier options. So all those things are definitely positive. This is another example of a nudge where you would do you trying to lose weight. And if you lose 1 pound, you can show it either as the graph on the left or on the right. And honestly, if I'm trying to lose weight, which I am, I definitely rather see the one on the right, because even though it's the same amount, 1 pound, it looks like I achieved a lot. Wow, look at that drop. Versus on the one on the left, it looked like a blimp. So I didn't really do much. And finally, this is another example of my health insurance sending me this notification to remind me to get a flu shot. Now, one thing that was demonstrated in various studies is that if you make a commitment, like I was mentioning earlier, you're more likely to follow through. So the email asks you to answer, are you planning to get a flu shot? Yes or no? And if I say yes, that means I'm already start committing in my mind. I already did that kind of commitment. Now, are they going to force me to get a flu shot? No. But this is a way for my health insurance to convince me to, hey, you probably should get a flu shot. And this is the last example that it makes perfect sense if you live in the United States. I don't know how the situation is in the rest of the world, but in the United States, you can't really count on the government to give you a big pension when you retire. So there is a fund, but it's not a lot of money, and it may run out of money. So there is a very big push from the government to convince workers to save money while they're working. Now, there is a lot of advantages tax-wise, because you can save money before taxes. So basically reduce how much money you earn in a year, so you pay less taxes. Also, a lot of companies will contribute to this fund. So if you save, let's say, 5% of your salary, the company will match it and give you an extra 5%. So it's basically free money. Now, this sounds an amazing idea, but most people don't sign up. There are a lot of reasons for this. One of them is very complicated. So, but the reality is not enough people save for retirement. So this company, when it shows you all the different benefits for the company, it tells you that by default, 6% will be taken from your salary and put in a saving account for you, unless you say something different. So this is definitely a nudge, and in fact, a nice choice for you, a nice default for you, because it will take away the effort of you deciding which plan I should choose and how much money. And if you do nothing, by worst case scenario, you get 6% of your salary saved every month automatically. And we all know that saving automatically is the easier way to save, because you don't even notice. So this is a wonderful example in which using a default can really help the welfare of the workers by saving money. If you want to change it, you can change it pretty easily. You don't have to worry about it. But a lot of time, we don't think about future. We don't want to think about retirement as in, I need money to live in retirement. And so we don't do anything. And that's a great way to do it for us. This other example is from a charity. And they definitely use a lot of psychological things, elements to persuade you to donate. But once again, it's not a hidden trick. It's pretty obvious that they're asking for money. It's not, it's not a surprise. But the way they ask for money, they make it very persuasive. The first thing, they have a nice headline. They say, tell them yes, instead of say, donate some money. It just immediately align you to this little girl, Valentina, who's one of the people that benefit if you are actually donating. So you're already creating this emotional connection. Also, the envelope has the name of a very reputable organization. It's very obvious to see it, at least in the United States. And they're also using a real stamp. Instead of using one of those pre-printed, we make it look more like a personal letter. Now, those are really subtle things, but they can make a big difference as far as donation is concerned. And it may make you notice. It's like, oh, wow, what is this? Instead of throwing it in the trash and say, no, I'm not going to do anything. Okay. So again, all those examples, in my opinion, are very good example of ethical persuasion. So what can you do? Obviously, follow those examples. That's great. But how can you make it in a practical term? Well, the first thing you want to do, you want to get informed. So that means you want to learn about the bad stuff. You want to learn about deceptive patterns, data mining, cookies, manipulation, any other techniques that marketing people use. And again, this is good for you as a consumer, but it's also good for you as a designer or marketer, because you know what not to do. And then I love those 4 questions. It's not complicated, but they're really good questions that make you pause before making decision in your design. The first question is, why are you doing this? Why are you making this decision, and who benefits? Is it only for the benefits of the company that makes more money, but then it kind of damage your customer, or is for the benefits of both of them? Then you want to also think about, what are your likely consequences of this decision? So is the decision gonna create problems? And try to think about it long term as well. When social media was created, nobody really thought about, oh, it's gonna become an addictive thing. People gonna feel really bad when they're using too much social media. At the beginning, they thought it would be a great way for people to connect with each other. So you want to try to think, even though you can't foresee everything, but trying to think what's the long-term consequence will be. And the most important one is, would I want my loved one to be using this product, or to be reading this text, or to be looking at this website? If my partner, my son, my daughter, my parents, would I be okay with them being exposed to this design? I think it should really make you pause if you have loved ones, right? So those questions come from a very great book called The Ethical Design Handbook, which offer a lot of practical tips on how to practice ethical design. And then another test that you can do, which is really nice, is a IRL versus URL test. So that was mentioned by Vidika Bansal. I hope I pronounced her name right, from Intuit. And what they were saying is that think about how it will work out in real life. Most of you are familiar with a website that once you go visit, it will have a pop-up that asks you to sign up for the newsletter or get a 20% off or something like this, right? But think about it if that would happen in real life. You actually go to a store, you're trying to go inside the store to see what they're selling, and somebody stop you at the door and say, I'm sorry, you cannot get inside inside our store unless you give me your email address or push me aside. Obviously, that would be really weird, right? But in website, that happens all the time. So sometimes trying to put it in those kind of terms can help you decide if that's a good design or not. There's other principle, and again, I will make the slides available so you can read it in length. For example, principle of good design, they go still through the same idea. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. That people shouldn't just be considered as part of the machine for you to make money. You want to maximize the freedom. You want to anticipate all the consequences. You want to maximize the good and minimize the bad. You want to treat cases like manners. So that means you want to always be consistent on how you behave. You want to consider the most vulnerable user, children, disabled, anybody that have any kind of vulnerability. And finally, design with honesty, clarity, and fitness or purpose. So basically, do no harm. So if you want to really summarize it, right? And my final point is, if you're convinced, and I really hope you are, that you should do your ethical design, how you convince your boss? Well, ethical design is good for customer, but it's also good for business. And this is because it reduces costs. For example, you may have less customer support calls. You don't have to fix your sites as much. You may get more revenue because you have more loyal customers. You may have more word of mouth. You will retain talent. It costs a lot of money to train new employees. If you're an ethical company, the best talent will be happy to stay. And then finally, if all else fails, no legal issue. Ethical practice are becoming laws in many, many countries, including obviously Europe with GDPR and other laws, but also in the United States and other countries around the world. So if all else fails, you can just say, well, if you're unethical, you may end up have to pay a lot of money in fees, right? This is just a really simple example, but you can take it and adapt it to your own company. For example, let's say that before using before you're using a very confusing, misleading design, and so you get a lot of calls at customer service. Let's say 200 a month. Let's say that takes about 16 hours to answer all those calls, and your hourly rate is $25. The monthly cost would be $400, right? This is pure math. What if you make your design much simpler and more transparent, and then you're only going to have 150 calls after that? That means you're going to save 4 hours, and that means you're going to save $100. Now, this is an overly simplified example, but I'm sure you can find those numbers in your own company. And that's a perfect example of why making a more transparent and ethical design can actually end up saving you money. So you have actual lower costs before even having higher revenues, right? And this is just one example of a fee that was levied on Amazon. And I think Amazon actually got the highest fee so far for, in this case, was the cancellation process, but some of their practice that were very misleading. So you can actually get hit with a very high fee. So if you want to learn more, those are two really great books that I recommend. I mentioned the Ethical Design Handbook before, but also Click is another great book. They're both available from smashingmagazine.com. And then those at the bottom, they are Principle for Good Technology or Ethical Design Manifesto, Privacy by Design. So there are different frameworks that you can use to make sure your design is ethical. Now, of course, being ethical shouldn't be a checklist, but is definitely something that can help you start. And with that, I'm done with my presentation and just want to know if you have any questions. Any questions, anyone?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tiziana, for shedding
of course
light on the importance of ethics and understanding dark patterns in design. I think it's crucial that we take this knowledge into our everyday work, reminding ourselves and our teams that our customers remember their experiences. And if they feel, and I have the experience also, and also from quantitative data, if they feel forced or pushed into something they didn't want, they are likely to leave in the long run if they remember this experience. So yeah, let's keep creating experiences that truly serve and respect our users, because that's how we build lasting relationships. Thanks again for this reminder. I think we have a question. Let me see. Oh.
May I ask, start with a question? Okay, perfect. From your personal experience, which are the toughest questions or the toughest situations where you have to like convince a client that what they do should not be done? Do you then back off and say, I don't want to have to do anything with this? Do you back off and say, this is not my project? Or how do you?
Well, in my life, I'm kind of fortunate because I'm a consultant. So I work with companies, and it's a little bit easier for me to say, no, I'm not going to do it. If you're an employee, it's a lot harder to say like, oh, this is unethical, I'm not going to do it. And that's why I also mentioned get informed and find out what the law is. Because I get a lot of time, the most common things is like cookies, data mining in United States. People trying to capture as much data as possible without the personal knowledge and making really confusing cookie banners. And so I remind them that A is illegal in California, and therefore they can get really high fine, which of course is not nice. If they're more willing to listen, I will explain why it's not a good idea. And I will remind them, I also have some numbers and statistics about how many people decide to quit a company or to go somewhere else after a bad experience or when they realize they're being tricked. So those are kind of hard data that is hard to kind of counter and just say, hey, look, this many people will refuse to buy from your company again if you trick them. And more people now understand when they're being tricked. So that's kind of the only thing to do. Now, there's going to be time in which you have no choice. You're an employee. Nothing you say will work. In this case, of course, trying to minimize as much as possible. Trying to make it as clear as you can. Even like, for example, I want to collect all those data. Right? Okay, just trying to make it very transparent about which data is actually collected. So at the very least, you give information. Or if they want to do a pop-up, which always happen, maybe make sure that the close button is really large so people can see it right away. So trying to minimize as much as you can. And remember, ethical design is on a spectrum. It's not that like you're either ethical or not. Any movement towards the light, I would say, is a win. So even if you can't get 100% what you want, the better you can make it, the better it is. And if you feel your company constantly doing unethical stuff, try to see if you can find another place, personally. And I know it's not possible for everyone, so, but.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
So one question is the session recorded? Is it going to be made available?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. We will share it on our YouTube channel. Another one from Martina. Is there any research on UX psychology and cultural background? So how do users feel about dark patterns in the US versus users in Asia, for example? Or better, from democratic and digitally experienced cultures versus nations that have not been digitally connected for that long? Do people become more cautious and perhaps more observant in the course of using digital media?
I believe so. Personally, I think in United States there is, and in Europe way more than in United States. There's been a lot of talk about ethics and discussion about it. There is different laws. Countries that haven't been online for as long, I think that they're gonna have a little bit more of a learning curve, and more. They will probably need more training, for sure. I can't speak for countries like China or other places because I really don't know what the situation is like. I assume that probably there are plenty misleading techniques there, but I can't say for sure because obviously it's a pretty close government, so I'm not sure what they're doing. But I do believe in practice will help. And I always encourage, if you have knowledge, share it as much as you can. So if you are in India, if you're in a different country where you feel there is not enough knowledge about this issue, be the one to bring it up, because I think it's really important. And I think that sometimes country can be a little insulated from each other. So if you have the knowledge, trying to share it and make sure people get a little bit of knowledge of this as well. So, but I mean, obviously the principles are the same as far as all over the world. Like psychological principles are very close to every country. There's few differences, obviously, in different society, but the way that the brain works is pretty similar in most countries. So the principle of how you trick people is pretty similar everywhere. So the more you can warn your customers about it or try not to do it, the better it is. I hope you answer your question.
I hope so too, but I guess yes. Another question. So can we have the link, a copy of this presentation after it's done?
Yes.
I think you already said that.
Yes.
It was very interesting. Thank you. By Ayana. Thanks. It was a really interesting presentation by Fanny. How can we receive mentorship from you, ma'am? By Didi.
How can you get? Well, I'm gonna put in my contact info again. So let me see it. So you can contact me via LinkedIn. That's the first link here. LinkedIn. I'm working on my website is still very rough right now. I'm working on making it better. So LinkedIn usually is the easiest way to get in touch with me if you want to learn more about it or if you want to work with me. I do offer some short-term mentorship for free, and then obviously depending how much you want, it may be paid. But I do have very short, like a short-term kind of basics mentorship that I offer to students or other people. Or I do also training for companies as well. So if you're interested, again, contact me via LinkedIn. And I, obviously I'm in United States, so if it's not United States, it will be virtual, but I do training for different groups, corporate groups, about ethical design and UX psychology and so on. And this is going to be in the presentation as well, so even if you didn't screenshot or didn't catch it, when we upload the slides, the link will be there.
So another one. Hi, Tiziana. Thank you for the great insights. I wanted to delve a bit deeper into the AI topic from the very beginning. What are your opinions on the ethical side of data usage by AI platforms? I believe they are also being used to produce specific designs and UI.
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I would say right now I am. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it. So I think there are a lot of ethical issues with AI in the terms of, one, how AI is trained. Not only the data, or like who, what kind of data is fed into AI, which usually is young white male. So that obviously created tons of biases in how the AI is trained. But also in how, for things like you mentioned, Mid Journeys or Stable Diffusion, they're trained on other people's artwork, and so there is very big kind of gray area. Is it fair that somebody's style and artwork is taken by this AI to recreate project? So the other big problem I have with AI is that I still feel that humans are better, and they can do much better work. But I also worry that it will be so cheap to use AI that company will settle for good enough and not go for what's really good or what's really correct. So that's kind of what I'm concerned. I think AI is here to stay, and I think it's great. I work with Photoshop all the time, and some of the AI tools are amazing. The things they can do is incredible, but I still feel that humans should be there. And my personal opinion is that I think there should be a regulation right now. I think private companies should not be able to release new AIs to the public before somebody actually tests it thoroughly. So internet was originally a government project, so there was a lot more safeguard before it got sent to the public. Right now, AI is developed by private companies. So that, to me, is a little bit of an issue if there is no oversight. So, but AI is not going to go away. So I think, it's important we all learn how to live with AI, and definitely learn about the dangers of it. There is a wonderful movie called The AI Dilemma that I strongly recommend to everyone if you haven't seen it. It's a very good movie that kind of defines the dangers of AI, in case that's the side you're on.
Yeah, absolute recommendation. Yeah, we have a meetup on the exact topic of AI and UX psychology in September.
Yes, can't wait.
The exact meetup. Hopefully, you are with us too then, Tiziana.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I'll be there.
What else? Great presentation. Thank you so much, Tiziana. I love the business rep at Mark. I look forward to catching up. This Alex. Okay. Another one from Jara. What type of industries or companies do you find are most open or responsive to utilizing behavioral design ethically?
Obviously, nonprofits. So, and companies that want to do good. I mean, company like Google don't want to do ethical design. So one other thing that's really important to understand too, there's some companies that survive because of data mining. Google, Facebook, all those companies. So they're not going to be open to change your business model to be ethical. So that's definitely what it is. But I think the smaller the company, the easier it is to try to explain why ethical design is a good idea. So again, nonprofit is the ideal situation, but there are plenty of other for-profit companies that they're really trying to do good. Any B certified company, I'm not saying that I can promise, but a B certified company probably will be very open to ethical design, and maybe already doing it. So I think.
Great.
Wonderful.
Are there any more questions? Just have one. Thank you for the fantastic talk.
Right.
Where will the presentation video be posted? We will write a wrap-up mail after our talk, as always, and we'll add the links to presentation and to the YouTube channel as well. Rihanna, anything else from your side? Okay. I think it was a fantastic session.
Okay, great.
As always, thank you so
Thank
much.
you for having me. Yeah, and keep in touch. Again, my LinkedIn is there, and I love to hear from all of you. And I'm always happy to talk about ethical design and UX psychology. So,
thank you so much. I think that's it for today. Thank you all for the exciting questions and, of course, the your absolutely expert answers, Tiziana.
Okay.
Thank you for staying on the computer and with us.
Of
For
course,
such a long time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Always. You should come to Berlin, as I said.
I will one day. I don't know. Maybe I can do a tour like Vienna, Berlin. I don't know. Yeah, I would love to. I will.
Cool.
And you can come to San Diego. It's so pretty here. So.
Yeah, actually, that's the plan for next year. But I will.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
Make sure let me know. I'd love to meet you in person.
I will. Yeah. The next meetup will take place in September, as said. More about the upcoming meetup, the content and the speakers soon on the meetup platform. If you have any wishes for speakers or would like to present a topic yourself, or just want to suggest free topics, feel free to send us a mail to info@ux.au. Then, yeah, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar and found it insightful and useful, as I did, at least. Goodbye, take care, and have a great night. And happy thinking.
Good night. Bye.